It's 1983, you're reading the latest issue of your favourite computer magazine and you spot an advert for a collection of 50 games on one cassette for only $9.95. Too good to be true maybe? I mean, there has to be something on there to make it worthwhile, right? And if all else fails, there's always that free calculator watch to sweeten the deal. So this was Cascade Software's Cassette 50, the notorious compilation of 50 games that was released to the 8-bit home computers back in 1983. It did appear on all the major home micros at the time, albeit in slightly different forms, but for this video we're going to be focusing on what was probably the most commonly owned version for the ZX Spectrum, and this was the one that I owned back then as well, for better or worse, for my home computer. I say notorious because Cassette 50 has always been remembered as a universally bad collection of terrible games written in BASIC by novice programmers at their bedroom desks, and I can vouch for that. These 50 games are mostly only good for taping over, but I do have memories of trawling through this collection one game at a time, digging for buried treasure, and the excitement of potentially striking gold was what I remember most fondly, even if most of these games did turn out to be utter tripe. So was it really that bad? We're going to find out now as we take a very quick look at the games broken up into groups of 10 at a time. We'll be picking out the best of each group, then considering the top 5 finalists to decide which game was the absolute best of the bunch, and whether the games that are actually worth playing were worth that £9.95 1983 asking price. The first batch of games kicks off predictably with a Pac-Man clone called Muncher, and I'll take this opportunity at the outset to explain that after each game loads in, you'll be required to manually type the run command to get it going, as these are all Sinclair BASIC program listings which can be looked through, examined and even improved upon if you have the knowledge. However, today we're just here to play the games, so we'll type run and get going. After sitting through an instruction page slowly appearing on the screen one character at a time, we can press enter to start and make our way around the maze, eating the dots, avoiding the monsters, and even munching on the asterisks, power pills, to turn the tables on the monsters. It's a valiant effort at a Pac-Man clone, considering the constraints of the BASIC programming language, but the enemies move directly towards you, stopping if there's a wall in the way, and this could easily have been rectified with a few lines of code to make them change direction if blocked, and the whole affair could have been made a little less tedious if the maze was smaller to compensate for the slow movement. Ski Jump is a gambling game where you'll get to place bets on which ski jumper will make the biggest jump. We're greeted by a screamingly loud intro page, so moving swiftly on from that, you'll be asked how much of your £50 you'd like to bet and on which colour of skier. The Spectrum keyboard had colours assigned to its number keys, so you have to enter the number that corresponds with the colour of your chosen skier. As these little guys take it in turns to make their jumps, you'll be rooting for them as they randomly land in different locations, and apparently if 2 land in the same place, the first to arrive is the winner, and that's something else that could have been fixed with a single line of code as well. I placed £40 on the light blue or cyan skier and managed to win the bet. Lose all your money though and you'll be thrown back to that screaming intro page. I'll also point out here before moving on that when you quit, an advert pops in from Cascade Software which betrays where they got all their games from. Yes, you too could be paid a handsome one-off fee of £10 for all your hard programming work so that Cascade can go ahead and make a fortune marketing your games to an unsuspecting public. An ugly and badly thought out intro page leads us into game number 3, Basketball. 2 players simultaneously, although both stop if more than one key is pressed at the same time, dribble the ball towards the opponent's basket. Aiming involves pressing fire near the basket, triggering a random throw, which makes this a game of pure luck. There's no upper limit on the score, so if you do play this you'll be eternally locked in basketball hell, or at least that is until you press reset or turn off your computer. Casting no illusions as to its origins, this Frogger clone, craftily titled Frogger, has the rare inclusion of some machine code baked into its basic listing. A nice looking intro page leads us into what is actually a fairly playable version of the arcade classic, albeit with slightly tricky and unresponsive controls, but you can colour me impressed. It's actually quite fun to play, with 4 lanes of traffic to cross, a central island, 4 lanes of water, and some pretty nicely drawn character graphics. It provides a decent challenge without being impossible. Bravo Mr. or Mrs. C. Blore for programming this, whoever you are. Bravo. A basic bat and ball game at number 5, Breakout, starts with a simple but concise instruction page before getting us straight into the sideways on action. A promising start until you see the ball spongily bouncing off the oddly defined brick graphics and unpredictably bouncing through some of the other walls, resulting in a mixture of occasionally intercepting the ball and then waiting for it to finish its seemingly random journey through the field of bricks. A bit of tweaking to the brick graphics and collision detection is probably all it would have needed to make it a more enjoyable version of Breakout. UTS declares its willingness to serve us, accompanied by a rendition of the Close Encounters movie's alien music in Crusher. Dr. Death has trapped us in his Crusher machine and will only spare our life if we give the correct answers to his mathematical conundrums within a strict time limit. With a choice of 3 difficulty levels, we get a set amount of time to decide whether each mathematical sum is correct or not. Answer correctly and we buy ourselves a point and some more time to live, but get it wrong and we're one step closer to a grisly death. Surprisingly tense this one, and the inevitability of our death only adds to the tension, with our only hope being to extend the suffering of what has turned out to be the supremely stressful final moments of our life. I was expecting a little light relief from the tension with this next game, promisingly titled Star Trek. Now we're talking. Sadly though, this is confusing, overly complicated, and has way too many commands that bear very little relation to the on-screen events. It had me reaching for the reset button in under a minute. Moving on. Martian Knock Out puts a spin on the traditional tank artillery genre of game involving power and angle settings. You have 15 rockets at your disposal to destroy a fleet of approaching alien ships. You get to decide the velocity of each rocket between 10 and 60 km per second, and your base moves randomly between each firing. I remember this one from back in the 80s and I never was able to clear the entire alien fleet. However, the programmer was probably aware of this challenge and throws us a bone at the end by letting us know if the Earth survived after all our rockets have gone. Apparently with only 5 alien ships remaining, we are probably safe. That's good enough for me. Boggles, same to you, and this one lives up to its name by being simultaneously unchallenging and impossible to win. Quite an achievement in itself to be fair, but with the computer making you go first every time, being the last player to deduct a number from the randomly generated value is all but inevitable. I would say this needs a bit of code tweaking to make it more achievable, but it'd still be an utterly pointless and joyless affair. Boggles indeed. The last game in this batch of 10 is Alien Attack. I was expecting Space Invaders and I got a super simple version of that, but with a challenging twist. After choosing a difficulty level, individual aliens make their way down the screen and you have to shoot them before they land by firing off underground lasers triggered by pressing the number keys 1 through to 0. Very simple, yes, but it has just the right balance of challenge and tension to make it a fun little blast and a test of your ability to judge distances on the screen. I actually had a few goes on this one. So which game takes the first top spot? Well, Frogger impressed me the most, technically. Muncher was almost there but needed some tweaks, and I love the tension of playing Crusher, but ultimately it's got to be about replayability, and the only one that kept me coming back for more was Alien Attack, so despite its simplicity, I'm going to put it in my top 5 mainly because I can tell that the programmer has put in time and effort into getting the balance of gameplay challenge to exactly where it needs to be to make the game fun to play. So on with the next batch of 10, and game number 11 here, Lunar Lander, was one that I was looking forward to. I do like a good moon landing game, and this one appears to contain all the right elements, with a long range approach section, then a lovely zoomed in close-up of the landing terrain. However, the ship is woefully unresponsive, and even with the movement buttons pressed constantly, there's hardly any movement at all, which makes aiming for the flat land a matter of luck. I've never seen the ship land without crashing once, even after hitting flat land. A real missed opportunity, this one. Imagine Pac-Man but with no power pellets, a square Pac-Man and ghosts, and all moving at a super slow pace. That's what we get here with game number 12, Maze Eater. Honestly, I don't think it'd be possible to make a slower version of Pac-Man even by Sinclair Basic standards. I got so bored with this one I ended up having more fun trying to get caught by the ghosts, and even that was a challenge. I really wanted to like this one. Microtrap has some cute little graphic characters, it's nicely presented, and you really do find yourself wanting to reach that black fuse in the wall, but even after selecting the easy difficulty level, I found that getting surrounded by the blue circuit pieces was all but inevitable, and it would have taken an immense amount of luck to win. Just a bit of tweaking to the difficulty levels and we might have had a semi-enjoyable experience here, but as is often the case with these old games, difficulty is mistaken for replayability, and the player ends up giving up and moving on, which is exactly what I did here after 2 attempts. Carmageddon, eat your heart out in this road-based murder simulator, Motorway. As the instructions explain, you move left and right in your car to avoid crashing into other cars and run over the men for bonus points. After successfully ending the lives of 8 of those little men, boredom led me to run my car deliberately into another vehicle to end the madness, and I had no trouble answering that question posed to me on screen there at the end of the game. Labyrinth is a simple affair, kind of a turn-based challenge requiring you to think your way through a basic randomly generated maze in an attempt to reach the treasure in the middle whilst avoiding the guards and watching your water levels, which deplete every time you move. I kind of enjoyed this one, and it did make me stop and think a couple of times about which route to take. When I lost, I did get the feeling that it might have been because of the decisions that I'd made, and I was able to win on my third attempt, so this is one I'd definitely come back to for another go. Finally, a 10-pin bowling simulator, or 30-pin bowling in this case, with Skittles, an insufferably unsatisfying attempt at a bowling alley game, which makes it nigh on impossible to get a strike by removing every element of skill from the game and replacing it with a ball that randomly moves through the cluster of pins after you send it hurtling down the alley. 19 pins was the best I could do with 6 balls at my disposal. On to the next then, and we get another car driving game. Racetrack, which unironically involves no racing at all, has you moving left and right down the most ineptly designed racecourse I've ever seen, which has evidently been designed to kill you. On the plus side, you do get to choose from 9 difficulty settings which affect the speed, so there's that, and there's a little bit of fun to be had here as you try to avoid those jagged walls, but ultimately it's likely to have you aiming for the walls in boredom after just a few seconds of gameplay. Ski Run sounds promising after the betting shenanigans of Ski Jump, and upon loading its true name is revealed as Spectral Skiing. At this point I was getting Horace Goes Skiing vibes, and I was intrigued as the course scenery made up of trees, flags, the start and finish line, and a nifty looking little crowd of onlookers gradually appeared on the screen. But as you can see from my dismal attempts at making it past the first few flags, this game is hard as nails. Unresponsive controls and a skier that moves way too fast for those controls means that even luck isn't going to get you far here. It's a proper shame, to be fair, as a few tweaks to the game code would undoubtedly sort this out. A real missed opportunity here, and sadly another for the trash heap. Tanks. For Pete's sake, don't get me started on this one. If there's one game to demonstrate how bad basic games can be, this is it. Get from one side of the screen to the other without hitting any invisible mines. Invisible mines, come on, it sounds awful even before the game started, and some seriously lazy coding means you'll end up running into a mine, even if you stand completely still. Literally, your best bet is to tear across the screen in a straight line before the random number generator decides there's a mine under your current location. Seriously, a truly terrible attempt at pretending to make something resembling a game. The last game in this batch of 10, Solar Ship, comes to our rescue after that last debacle, even though it does involve piloting your ship directly into solar stars. Nice presentation, a high score facility, a steady pace and responsive controls, plus some nicely defined graphics all make for a semi-enjoyable romp through the stars. It does get boring quite quickly, but it feels like a breath of fresh air after all the dross we've just had to endure. A few dangerous obstacles would have been an easy addition, and maybe more than just one round and a couple of lives to lose, but I guess you can't have everything in the world of novice, impatient games programmers. Plenty of crap to sift through in this batch, but my standouts were Labyrinth with its thought-provoking gameplay, and Solar Ship with its refreshing level of playability. Ski Run, or Spectral Skiing as it turned out to be called, also gets a mention because it's so close to being a decent Sinclair Basic game, which is a very rare thing, but I'm picking Labyrinth for my second top spot here, as its deceptively simple look and gameplay style give way to a deeper gameplay experience that I actually want to go back and play again. Kicking off our third batch is another attempt at a 10-pin bowling game, this time actually providing 10 pins to knock down. A much better bowling alley experience this one, with the ball moving along the bottom of the screen, waiting for you to press a key to launch it towards the pins. All good so far, but after my second attempt, I discovered that it was super easy to get a strike every time, thanks to the ball easily taking out so many pins at once. Combined with the fact that the score does not relate to the actual number of pins you knock down, this turned into a bit of a disappointing affair. I was awarded full points on my first attempt for knocking down only 8 pins. Then on my second attempt I scored nothing for knocking down all 10. The final insult though is the way this game pokes its tongue at you for having the audacity to quit. Charming. Game number 22 is another one with a mystery name that's revealed upon loading. Cars, or Alley Driver as it calls itself on the intro screen, is very similar to Racetrack, only now your car moves down the track rather than the track coming to you. Other than that, it's pretty much the same game, with the same end result, an overwhelming urge to drive yourself deliberately into a wall. How about half-decent Pac-Man game at last? Stomper is certainly a candidate for that, and definitely the best Pac-Man game so far, with an interesting twist too. You control the little white tadpole creature eating dots for points whilst avoiding the skull that's chasing you and trying to catch the green Stomper that's running away from you. It's an entertaining mix of running, hiding, chasing and dot eating, and it's quite challenging too, but not so much as to make you feel like it's impossible. This one left me feeling like I'd like to play it some more, so it gets a thumbs up for that reason. I was curious to see how somebody might approach making a pinball game in BASIC, and after seeing this effort I'm convinced it's probably a genre best left to machine code programmers. You get a red ball bouncing around a load of green walls in seemingly random directions, a couple of purple bumpers and a noticeable lack of flippers. Instead there's a Breakout style bat at the bottom you can move to the left or right to intercept the ball. With sluggish movement and only one ball to play with before it's game over, pinball is sadly another one for the Cassette 50 sin bin. Cavern sounds potentially exciting, an exploration adventure game maybe? Well, as we've learned so far, probably not, but it does at least give us a decent effort at some Cavern-y looking wall graphics and interesting characters, although this is another one of those drive down an alley type affairs. This time though we're a rescue tank attempting to pick up as many of the little people as possible. It's definitely more interesting and playable than the previous alley driving games, and there's an intriguing countdown in the top right too, indicating that there's some kind of goal to reach. I couldn't seem to get that far though, as I repeatedly came a cropper on the Cavern walls when faced with a narrow gap that was impossible to get through. Again, it's a shame, as a tweak to the code would probably help prevent these impassable obstacles from randomly appearing, so this one's another near miss, I'm afraid. The simply named Laser first makes us sit through a drawn out intro sequence, then boldly claims it's gonna beat you. Well, let's see then. And it's a strong start, almost reminiscent of a primitive version of a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. You lose a small amount of fuel each time you move up or down, so there's that to bear in mind, but the main gameplay involves avoiding the enemy lasers whilst trying to shoot back at the enemy. It has a nice game mechanic where your lasers will travel forward for as long as you hold down the fire button, which gives an extra bit of control, and hitting the enemy without getting destroyed is actually a decent challenge. This is another one that made me want to play again, so it's another thumbs up. I definitely wasn't expecting Ridley Scott levels of excitement here with Alien, but what I did get was a fairly competent version of Space Invaders. It runs at a surprisingly good pace for a basic game, and the collision detection is pretty good, so you do end up feeling like you're getting somewhere. It is a bit weird though when the enemy bullets start appearing out of thin air after a decent number of aliens have been cleared away. Probably a little bit too difficult too, as it's impossible to shoot any of the enemies once they get particularly close to the ground. Still a surprisingly technically accomplished basic game, and one that's worth a few plays just to see if you can clear away those aliens before they get too close to shoot at. If you fancy piloting a transport helicopter over the sea, Cargo has you covered in this aquatic delivery simulation, taking place in wartime presumably, as you'll be avoiding missiles while you attempt to land on a cargo ship, then return the cargo to the docking area. The game manages to provide a decent challenge without making it impossible, and I particularly like the way your helicopter is given a bit of a head start when leaving the ship, so you don't get unfairly smacked by unavoidable missiles. It's a fun and challenging game that's actually interesting to play, so a genuine bravo to the programmer for this one. Not to be mistaken for a 1980s synth-pop song by Yellow, The Race is actually another betting game. It's more exciting than that ski jump one, as well, as at times I was genuinely out of my chair rooting for the little guy I'd bet my money on. Renamed by the publisher, I'm guessing to fit on the inlay card, the 100 metre sprint gives us £100 to bet on one of 6 runners, each with varying odds, and has some nicely defined graphics to enjoy as these little guys sprint to the finish line. There is some excitement to be had here, although I have to say it's super frustrating when your guy is leading the way and suddenly decides to run on the spot, allowing the others to speed past. Well, maybe speed is a bit generous, but this is a good effort nonetheless, and I'm starting to think it's going to be quite difficult to pick a favourite from this particular batch of 10 games. Number 30, and the last in this batch, and ooh, it's the skull. And ooh, it's actually quite good. Pretty simple in its concept, but deceptively entertaining for that reason. You start in a random position and have to use your laser to cut through the ground, creating a path to the exit. The skull is waiting for you there, however, so you'll need to plan your path before releasing the skull, so you can quickly follow your beaten path back around to the exit without being captured. I said it sounded simple, didn't I? But the level of strategy involved here surprised me. Depending on where you start from, you'll have a number of options at your disposal as you work out how best to approach this challenge. You can also factor in the laser too, as it can be used to shoot the skull, which delays it slightly, giving you more time to escape. Honestly, this is a really fun little challenge, and I had quite a few goes on this one, each time trying a different strategy which resulted in varying degrees of success. I said it was going to be difficult to pick a winner from this batch, and boy was I right. I'm also torn because there are so many good ones here, so it's going to be a toughie. Stomper's great with its nice spin on the Pac-Man theme. Cargo is another fun and well thought out game, and the 100-metre sprint provided some genuine excitement. But for me, a deceptively fun and strategic game of the Skull kept me coming back for more, so the Skull takes the top spot here. Onward with games 31 to 40 now, and we start with a surprisingly original concept for a Cassette 50 game in Orbit. You'll be piloting a ship around a planet attempting to intercept a cargo. By increasing and decreasing your distance from the planet, you'll have to try and dock with the cargo as quickly as possible, with your final score being based on the time that you took. The game provides enough of a challenge to be interesting without being impossible to beat, so it ends up being quite fun to play. And I did forget for a while that I was playing a game written in BASIC, so hats off for the sense of immersion, although it's only really fun for a couple of goes before it all starts getting a bit samey. With a name like Muncher, I was fully expecting another Pac-Man clone. This though is a romp around a field collecting strawberries whilst avoiding poisonous berries. You control a disembodied mouth in its quest for yummy strawberries, and although it's presented quite nicely and has responsive controls, it gets boring quite quickly, with the only real peril being whether or not a poisonous berry is suddenly going to appear in front of you. The score is awarded at the end based on how long you took to munch all the strawberries. I don't want to say much about this bowling game, it's another proper stinker. You're supposed to be able to adjust the distance bowled by moving the bowler's arm, which looks like he's waving a pole around. This appears to make no difference to the distance though, and it just becomes an exercise in watching red and blue blobs moving to the right. This is my idea of gaming hell. Literally the worst Space Invaders clone ever made awaits us in Raiders, a shooting game that manages to avoid the programming challenge of animation by having invisible missiles and aliens that simply stand still and flash, waiting to be shot at. It's also difficult to get shot too, so I got more enjoyment from this game by trying to catch the alien bullets rather than trying to shoot the aliens. It was all a bit depressing really. Field? Field, okay, field. What could possibly go wrong? Well, invisible mines for starters, which we've already established are not a good feature in a game, although I never found a single one while I was playing this, so I'm fine with that. But a game that involves collecting a green twig whilst avoiding a dog that only travels in a straight line? I think Field is too exciting a name for a game of this calibre, so I'm going to call it dog shit. Embark upon a quest to steal as much dragon's gold as possible in Draggold, a super simple text adventure with what I think might be a randomly generated map, so good luck with your pen and paper here. By choosing which directions to travel, you might find some gold, a dragon who will steal back some gold or eat you if you don't have enough gold, or you might come across an obstacle that can cause instant death, which makes hunting for all that gold a bit pointless. There are probably more outcomes to discover here than I came across, but I didn't have the time or patience to discover them all, so we'll leave this one in the Dragon's Cave where it belongs and make good our escape. In Space Search, you'll be searching through space in your hashtag spaceship and orbiting around asterisk stars to gather fuel. You're looking for a particular planet, and if that planet happens to be in the star system that you're gathering fuel from, you win. It's good, isn't it? Do you want to go? Inferno. I hated this with a passion back in the 80s, and for that reason it's one of the games I remember most vividly. Navigate your red square in complete silence from the left compartment, through the long corridor in the middle, and into the right compartment to make your square go green. Then navigate your green square in complete silence from the right compartment, through the long corridor in the middle, and into the left compartment to make your square go red. If you do this 10 times before the purple fire rises up from the bottom of the screen and blocks the corridor, you win. If the purple fire blocks the corridor, you'll have to kill yourself by running into the fire or a wall. I recommend running into a wall before you lose the actual will to live in real life. You still with me? Good, let's take a look at number 39 then, Nim. It's similar to Boggles, that impossible to win number game, but this time you actually have a chance of winning, and you have to deduct items from rows of stars rather than numbers. Playing against the computer, if you manage to be the last player to take away one or more stars, leaving none behind, you win. I had 2 goes at this, winning my first game and losing my second, so if you're into this kind of puzzle game, go ahead and fill your boots. The last of the 10 in this batch is a welcome relief after the test of endurance we've just been through. Voyager is another memorable one for me, but for the right reasons this time. Its presentation is super slick for a basic game, kicking off with an impressive opening sequence before swiftly moving us on to the gameplay. We're piloting our spaceship up and down as it moves through a debris field. We're avoiding the solid obstacles whilst collecting as many aliens as possible. We get 3 lives, and after reaching a target number of aliens, the playfield clears to begin a new level with different graphics. This is really lovely to play and has enough graphical variation and balanced challenge to make it a really worthwhile game. Hats off to D. Brown in 1983 for a very respectable Sinclair basic creation. It's just a shame Cascade only paid him 10 quid for it. I imagine you can work out for yourself which one I'm picking from this batch. Orbit deserves an honourable mention here for that sense of immersion, but ultimately it's got to be Inferno. No, sorry, seriously though, obviously Voyager takes the prize for its presentation, playability and all-round good game design that makes it a pleasure to play, and it's probably the closest to resembling a commercial game release we've seen so far on this cassette. Right, it's the final 10 and congratulations for making it this far. Number 41 gets arty with Sketchpad, another name change for the inlay, presumably because Etch-a-Sketch was trademarked. It was always going to be a challenge getting an art package running on a Spectrum, not to mention one in Sinclair Basic, and although Mark Elliott, who wrote this in 1983, did a valiant job including all sorts of creative options for the user, this package was doomed to fail from the start. With no mouse or light pen at our disposal and a heavy reliance on guesswork for where our objects are going to appear on the screen, there's not a lot you can do with this that's of any great use beyond just novelty. After selecting my paper, ink and border colour, I went with white on black, I managed to draw some lines, which was nice, but my first attempt at a circle crashed the program when it tried to draw outside the usable screen. I think with a bit of practice and patience this could be a bit of fun, but with no way to save your creations and the constant danger of crashing the program and losing your work, trying to make pictures with this is just a bit too stressful. Nice try though. Well, I suppose there had to be at least one city bomber game on here, and Manhattan Blitz does the honours. It's one of those games where your plane flies over a city and you have to bomb the homes of innocent people to clear a landing strip to save your own life. The needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many, I guess. This is a case of it does what it says on the tin and everything works as you'd expect, so we can't complain really, although it's a bit baffling at the end for a game called Manhattan Blitz. Apparently we just bombed Berlin. Now I do love a good fishing game, so I was looking forward to this one, but sadly this is definitely not a good fishing game. You start with £30 to spend on a rod, reel, line, weights, bait and hooks. Bafflingly though, it asks you to select a bait before starting even though you were only able to buy one type. I got stuck here because I didn't realise mackerel had to be entered with a lowercase m, so I reset and started again with crab, which I thought might be simpler to spell. The rest of the game then consists of waiting for a kink to appear in your rod and pressing 0 to catch the fish. The game ends when the time runs out, with your score being the total weight of the fish you caught. This game could have been so much better, so much in fact that I've decided to try and make my own fishing game in Sinclair Basic, and if I ever get the time to finish it, I'll put it up on my itch.io page as a free download. You can find that on my bio link page, which is in my YouTube channel's About section. In Mystical Diamonds, you must break into a castle and steal the diamonds. You die when you hear the sound. Well, I'm glad that's all cleared up. This one's actually quite ambitious and features multiple levels. I'm not sure how many though, as I couldn't get past the third. The first is easy, you just run up the side. In level 2 you have to make like Kate Bush and go running up that hill, jumping over the boulders as you go. In level 3, which was the one that scuppered me, I just couldn't seem to get onto that rapidly moving bridge, even though it seemed like my timing was perfect, so that's as much as we get to see today. I quite like the graphics in this next one, Galaxy Defense. The intro page features a title made up of aliens, and seeing those little alien characters fills me with anticipation of what's to come. The instructions are fairly straightforward, Z and X for left and right and P to fire. And then we get to select a skill level, but without any guidance though, so I just put 1. And then the game begins proper, and colour me impressed once again, it actually looks really good. And it's playable too. It feels like a simplified version of Galaxians, and what they've done with the graphics really gives it a nice, spacey atmosphere. So this is another one that gets a thumbs up from me. If you've ever played the board game version of Mastermind with the coloured pegs, Cypher will be very familiar. It's a nicely presented version of that game that lets you play against the computer and provides options to change the number of pegs in a line, how many colours of peg to play with, and how many guesses you'd like, which alters the numbers of rows accordingly. This seems to be really cleverly programmed, but I did start having a few doubts when the computer appeared to give the wrong clues in the section on the right with the smaller black and white pegs, which are essential for working out what your opponent's pegs are. But for that one issue, this might have been a game that wouldn't have looked out of place as a standalone puzzle game on shop shelves. Sadly, it's another example of a near miss, which is rendered unplayable by a programming bug. I was back to losing the will to live again with this next one, Jetmobile. We'll keep it brief. Basically there's a yellow thingy moving around inside the green thingy, and you can slightly influence its direction by using Q and Z for up and down and I and P for left and right.
There's a red thingy moving toward the green thingy. I think we're the green thingy.
Don't hit the red thingies. Press jump to make a little man jump a randomly selected height after waiting for him to start moving, and hope he doesn't hit the barrels. Next. Only 2 to go now, thank goodness, and I thought it couldn't get any worse, but here we are. Attacker. Move the hole around to capture the white square inside your box. Oh, and you can press O to make the white square randomly change direction. Oh. Right, final game, number 50. Yay, space mission. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? Well, let's have a look. And have they saved the best till last? Have they? Pilot your ship, which looks suspiciously like a letter H, into the red matter, and don't touch the blue antimatter. If you absorb some red matter, a bit of antimatter will disappear. Absorb the red matter to win. It actually sounds like a fun endeavour, but as has often been the case with these games, the programmer has made a creative choice and made it impossible to hit your first 1 or 2 bits of red matter before becoming completely engulfed in blue antimatter. I think I need a detox. Well, hopefully another look at the better games from this batch will be enough of a detox, so let's pick out the highlights. Manhattan Blitz was a perfectly serviceable version of City Bomber, and Cypher deserves a mention I think because it's just so close to being a really good standalone puzzle game. But let's face it, Galaxy Defense is the standout here, as I can't really fault its simple but playable interpretation of Galaxians. So we made it through, and well done for sticking with me for what has been an enormous test of patience fueled by morbid curiosity, I'm guessing, and that leaves us with our final top 5 Cassette 50 games to choose from. In order of which games I personally like to go back to and play the most, we have at number 5, Galaxy Defense, a good looking game that plays well and is actually fun, but for some reason I don't feel particularly strongly about going back to it. Number 4, Labyrinth, not quite so good looking, but a thought-provoking game that lets you take as long as you like to work out a strategy for reaching your goal. Number 3, Alien Attack, another simple looking game but one that offers a genuine test of skill and what I'm going to call eye-to-screen coordination. Number 2, The Skull. Again, it's not particularly pretty, but its simplicity conceals a level of strategic action that I just wouldn't have expected from a game written in BASIC. And our overall winner at number 1, Voyager. With its slick presentation, varied graphics, responsive controls, level-based gameplay design, and actual achievable goals, this is the one title that stands out from Cassette 50 that comes closest to resembling a game that you might have been happy to buy for a couple of quid from the shelf of your local computer shop back in the early 1980s. Congratulations to D Brown, whoever you are, for this fine example of what can be done by a bedroom programmer. And if you're still out there somewhere and watching this, do touch base and let us know what you did with that measly 10 quid that Cascade paid you for Voyager, and maybe fill us in on what you've been getting up to these days. I reached out on social media for your comments on Cassette 50, which home computers you played it on, and for any good or bad memories, and here's what a few of you had to say. Acorn Electron on YouTube mentions the various versions for different computers that Cascade Software released. Acorn remembers the games being mostly garbage and that they'd never have picked anything from Cassette 50 over something like Jetpack or Manic Miner. Gary Lawless on YouTube remembers the magazine adverts for Cassette 50 but thought $9.95 was a bit too expensive to risk on games he hadn't seen or played. He can imagine though parents or other family members thinking it was good value for 50 games and buying it as a present for a child in the family. Matt Dissart on YouTube had Cassette 50 for his Atari XL. Most of the games didn't load properly though, and it was only recently that he played it on an emulator and got most of them working, but he wished he hadn't bothered. At least he got a free calculator watch out of it though. Robbie Shepherd on Mastodon has a similarly dim view of Cassette 50, simply stating that they're grateful it was only available through mail order, which made it harder to buy. It's funny the mail order thing, because I don't ever remember filling in one of those magazine forms, and I think mine might have come as part of one of those home computer club deals where you'd get a handful of games for about 50p and then be legally obliged to buy more games from them for the next year or so. Tendril Mish on YouTube got the BBC Beat version soon after getting an Acorn Electron around 1985 or 86. Only some of the games worked on the Electron, which was essentially a cut-down BBC computer, but all the games Tendril did get working were garbage. There were, however, unprotected programs that you could break into and tinker with, so Cassette 50 became a part of the process of learning to code. Many years later, they're still writing games, but now on PS5, so thank you, Cascade. And finally, Alex Cooper on Facebook is working on a remake of Cassette 50 which is due to be released in January 2027. He's inviting Sinclair Basic programmers to submit their creations to be distributed in a collection called USB 50. The whole thing will be freely downloadable, and I've put a couple of links for details in this video's description. Alex does stress, however, that there will be no calculator watch included this time. Aww. So, did you have a copy of Cassette 50, and if so, which home computer did you play it on, and what did you think of it? Go ahead and post your thoughts in the comments and we can have a bit of a chat down there, and if you'd like to be featured in a future Retrospectives video, follow me on my various social media platforms where I'll be asking for your comments whenever I'm working on something new. I'll leave you now with a bit of bonus footage from Voyager, but first I'd like to thank everyone who submitted their comments, to thank you for liking and subscribing, and of course to thank you all for watching Retrospectives.